Hello, my name is Patrick Noaker, an attorney here in St. Paul, Minnesota. With me is Todd Swiderski. He's the Minnesota representative for the group called the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, SNAP, and Suzanne Severson, the Twin Cities Voice of the Faithful. We're here today. We just filed the 10th lawsuit here in Ramsey County regarding sexual abuse by Brother Raymond Rose. By all accounts, Brother Rose is one of the most widespread child molesters in Minnesota history. What happened in this case was this kid had gone over to Dunroven Retreat Center, and he had met Brother Rose. He'd been to the retreat center several times. As part of that relationship that Brother Rose developed with him, this young man ended up going down to Chicago with a number of other kids. It's a very sad story because at this point, the sexual abuse that occurred here, we know that the Christian brothers knew Brother Rose was a child molester before allowing him to take this group of kids down to Chicago. What's significant today is a lawsuit for fraud, and the fraud that was committed here was the Christian brothers knowing Brother Rose was a child molester and allowed him to serve in positions where he would have unsupervised access to children. And that's what happened here. They didn't feel the need to tell this child or his parents that Brother Rose was a known child molester, despite the fact that Brother Rose was going to be the adult supervisor of this trip. This is outrageous. It's just outrageous, and the fact that they didn't feel that they needed to provide this information to this family is just unbelievable. I'll tell you that. This is actually, technically speaking, the 11th lawsuit. There was one in California several years ago now that was filed and then resolved and settled out there. Actually involved two victims. Okay. Right. So when we say the 10th, it's really the 10th lawsuit here in the Upper Midwest. Right. Okay. This is the 7th lawsuit filed here in Ramsey County. And each one of those lawsuits is still pending. We're going through the information gathering phase in all of them. There are also 3 lawsuits in Fargo, North Dakota pending against Brother Rose and the diocese, as well as Shanley High School there. And those cases also are pending, and we just defeated, motions to dismiss on those cases. So the court has ruled that, in fact, those cases are going to be allowed.
This one is fraud. The other ones, they do not deal with fraud, but
The other lawsuits here in Minnesota all deal with fraud.
Does that explain a little bit the distance in time? Why the time factor, or why is that?
Well, in this case, that's a significant question. In this case, we're bringing a lawsuit for fraud. This man didn't know that he'd been defrauded.
Right.
I mean, he didn't know he'd been defrauded until he saw in the news that, wait a minute, somebody else got hurt by Rose, and they knew it. They knew Brother Rose was a child molester before they sent him with us on this trip. And as soon as he learned that, well, then he could bring a fraud claim, and it wasn't up until that time. So actually brought it as soon as he learned that he'd been defrauded. Okay.
And the lawsuit for today, maybe the others, well, what are you looking for in the lawsuit? To have some admission or some removal of this guy, or what?
Yeah. What this young man wants is accountability. He wants to know the answer to the question: why did they send a known child molester with us on a trip to Chicago? This kid had to share a room with a known child molester, and that child molester ended up molesting him. I mean, I think he has the right to ask that question and get the answers. I think he has. Now, he also, has had some challenges. He's going to need some therapy. He's going to need some treatment because, you know what? Being molested as a child affects you your entire life.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Severson. I'm a 1976 graduate of Archbishop Brady High School. Brother Raymond Rose was my 10th grade U.S. history teacher, 1973 to 1974, which happens to be a year after this particular individual's alleged abuse took place. I'm very concerned that my classmates may have been harmed, although I don't know that. There were no sophomore trips to Dunroven school sponsored that year, but Brother Ray has a habit of bringing young people who are being schooled in Christian Brother schools to Dunrobin and perpetrating abuse on them. And so I'm very concerned, so I'm reaching out to my classmates. I also would, as a graduate of a Christian Brothers high school, I value that order and that education very much, and I'm asking the Christian Brothers to make a full and transparent disclosure of all of Brother Ray's assignments and to actively seek victims.
And I'm joining with Suzanne and Pat today to specifically ask the Archdiocese and the Christian Brothers to take the plaque off the wall at Dunrobin, the plaque and the signage that honors Raymond Rose. Now, because we had earlier asked the Archdiocese to assist us in taking children out of harm's way in Chicago, and they informed us they had no jurisdiction over that, and because when we asked them to help us with the Cretan victim, they again said it's not part of their responsibility, and they tell us that Raymond Rose was never with them. However, in the report that is in that lawsuit, it talks about Raymond Rose being assigned to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church over by De La Salle High School 23 years after the first allegation of sexual abuse surfaced. So in light of that, the Archbishop Neinstedt, Bishop Aquila in Fargo, and Provincial Carr I am giving them the Hypocrite Award because they talk the language of Jesus, but they do not walk it. Take Raymond Rose's name and plaque off the wall. Reach out to Catholics that have been harmed from Raymond Rose in virtually every Catholic high school in the Archdiocese. And Bishop in Fargo needs to stop going into the courtroom and denying the allegations as lawyers of the Christian Brothers tried to throw the cases out. That is not Christian, that is not pastoral, so they get the SNAP award for hypocrisy. There are bewildered Catholics in this Archdiocese and in Fargo that are wondering why their top officials are not responding correctly. Possibly the most prolific clergy sex offender to ever walk across the street in Minnesota. Time to stop honoring, and it's time to stop hiding him. Reach out to those that have been harmed. This past summer, when I went out to Dunrobin, here's a wooden plaque with his name on it, and I focused in on the names here. Here's his pictures, and these are various buildings, housing structures, where some of the Raymond Rose victims came in contact with Raymond Rose. Raymond Rose has had the opportunity to use Dunrobin to groom and abuse children for years and years. Suzanne asked me a question earlier about those pictures, and what's interesting is some of the abuse victims, when they see a picture of one of those cottages or one of those cabins,
It'll be a trigger.